Boom. What's up, everybody? um, Hopefully the Wi-Fi is still good. I'm still trying to figure out what the heck is going on with that. I switched out LAN cables. I reset the router multiple times. I don't really know what else to do. I've talked to my provider, and they say basically suck it up. So, so hopefully the internet sticks with me here today. We'll see if I cut out at any point today. But yeah, what's up, fellas? Welcome in, guys and gals. I see that we already have some questions coming in here, so thank you guys so much for already joining already. So we're just gonna get right into it. Again, AMA. So if you guys just have any questions, just drop down in the comments. I'll just go through everything. We'll be here for another hour 15 or so. So just drop them down in the comments, and we'll have some good time. So Chris is in a full rebuild, 10-team, one quarterback PPR. If I can trade Diggs for Burrow and then flip Burrow to buy back my 24 first plus Kyler, should I? Wow. So I feel like you're losing a lot of value moving from Diggs to Burrow. Like you're not just able to like in a one quarterback league, Burrow is not worth a whole lot, especially compared to Stephon Diggs. To give you a kind of a estimate on the value difference between the two, um, like in my head, it's like a first round pick. But I want to make sure that that is kind of accurate to consensus here. So throwing this into the trade analyzer for a 10-team one quarterback. Yeah, it says that the calculated difference is 225 points, which is basically equivalent to the 1.07 this year. That's just going from Diggs to Joe Burrow. Um, so you're missing a first round pick's worth of value going from him to Burrow. Now, if you can get that or even get anything on added on top of Joe Burrow, that would be fantastic. And then trade away Burrow for a 24 first and Kyler, that is also fantastic. So I'm definitely on board with getting to Burrow and then flipping him for your first back and for Kyler. That's an amazing deal. But I do think that you're missing out on some stuff going from Diggs to Burrow, that I think that you need to get some value back on top of that. Alex, love the Friday show. Thank you. 12-team, one quarterback rebuilding. This is the team. Have 424 first as well, too. Part two. Should I use my 6 taxi spots on my rookies and second-year wide receivers to ensure a second early 24 pick? We have 6 taxi spots because we're 50-man rosters with full IDP. Holy crap. Should I use my 6 taxis? Sure. I'm like I'm not the biggest taxi spot fan, but I guess in 50-man rosters with full ID, like my whole point is just like, why don't you just add extra roster spots instead of having taxi spots that only certain amount of players can go into? Like just add extra roster spots on your bench. That's the way I view it. But sure, use your 6 taxi spots up for sure. If you have them, definitely be able like use them for sure. I don't know if I answered that question fully. Hopefully I did. Uh, Nick, appreciate you doing this. Appreciate you being in here. Caleb, what are you doing with Trey Lance in Superflex? I've got Mahomes as my QB1 and Rodgers as QB2. Lance is really my only depth. You're holding on to Trey Lance. Basically, the hope right now is that either Brock Purdy is injured enough, which from what it sounds like and what I'm hearing from sports fantasy football Twitter docs, especially Jeff Moeller, who's part of DLF himself too, is that Brock Purdy is looking pretty good and on track to be back. If not for week 1, definitely like in September. That's what I'm hearing at least. So the hope is either that's not the case and Trey Lance then beats out Sam Darnold and Trey Lance is the starter for the Niners and then he does well enough in that role that it forces Shanahan not to move back to Brock Purdy. I don't think that that's necessarily their plan. So then the other option is that you're hoping that Trey Lance then gets traded to somebody. It could be, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, any other team that has or needs kind of that bridge quarterback, or could be looking for somebody that could be their long-term option if the price is right and it's cheap enough if it works out for Trey Lance. I'm holding on to him. I'm not really looking to sell him because I don't really know what you can sell him for right now. I'm actually editing a video that Justin is going to drop on Sunday. That's our top 24 rankings for quarterbacks. And Lance is QB 23 in that. He's ahead of Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, some other guys like that. But he's, very easily behind a bunch of other guys like Derek Carr and, um, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, like all those other kinds of quarterbacks. Jared Goff, even too. I don't know if I said him. And for me, he'd probably even be behind guys like Matthew Stafford as well too, just because I think Stafford really bounces back this year, and I think he's a good buy low right now, just because of the unknown of Trey Lance. So I'm holding on to him. If you can buy another QB3, because I don't really trust him as my QB3, I'd put him more as my QB4. So if you can buy a cheap QB3 like a Stafford, like a Mac Jones, like a Sam Howell, even or a Ritter, somebody like that, as your QB3 for this year, then just see what happens with Trey Lance moving forward. How does dynasty quarterback value change from 1 QB Superflex and 2 QB? So this is a great question. So it changes drastically going from 1 quarterback to Superflex. Basically, because 1 quarterback in dynasty is really not much different than redraft. Like the idea behind Superflex is to make quarterbacks more valuable by forcing you to have to start more, right? But it really doesn't. In all honesty, it really doesn't change um, quarterback scoring, which is honestly the biggest issue. That's why late round quarterback works in redraft and all that stuff, where you're able to get by with guys who are like QB2s, but you can stream them. You can play the right assortment of guys and Frankenstein a quarterback together that could end up being a top 5 guy over the course of the season. That you don't necessarily need to spend that top 5 quarterback price to go get Lamar or Herbert or Hurts or Mahomes or anything like that. And that same thing kind of applies to dynasty as well too, because you can do the exact same thing. Superflex though, because you have to start 2, and it's ideal to start 2 in Superflex, it definitely does change it. I don't know if I can put like an exact multiplier on it, but it makes quarterbacks who are worth maybe like seconds and thirds in 1 quarterback league all basically first round picks. We're at the point now we've kind of evolved to where not every starting quarterback equals a first round pick. We were there in like 2020, 2021. But now guys, like Jimmy G and Mac Jones and Stafford, all the guys I just listed with the Trey Lance stuff, they're not first round picks anymore in Superflex, where it was just auto starter in Superflex equals first round pick. We're not there anymore, which is good, I think. But it definitely increases the value pretty tremendously. Now, going from Superflex to quarterback, there is an increase in value, but it's not that significant because at the end of the day, Superflex leagues should be treated as 2 quarterback leagues. You just have that added flexibility of just in case you don't have a quarterback, you can throw in, a running back or a wide receiver, a tight end into that Superflex spot. Whereas in 2 QB leagues, if you don't have that quarterback, you're taking a 0 in that spot. So it does change it a little bit, but not ultimately so much that I'm like really super massively overvaluing top end quarterbacks or low end quarterbacks. It raises more so the floor of the QB3s and QB4s to where they're more important to have because they need to be started at some point, during bye weeks and injuries and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully I answered that question well. I don't know if I did there either. But it's a pretty drastic difference from 1 quarterback to Superflex. Perfect example of this is this trade, Diggs for Burrow. So Diggs for Burrow in a 1 quarterback league, I said is you're missing a first round pick. It should be Diggs for Burrow and a first in 1 quarterback. Whereas in Superflex, you're probably missing a first round pick on the other side, where it should be Diggs and a first for Joe Burrow in a Superflex league. So that hopefully that at least gives you a little bit of context in terms of the value difference between 1 quarterback and Superflex. If it was 2 quarterback, probably be the same price regardless. A first and Diggs for Burrow. So Nathan, 10-team PPR Superflex, start 9 Burks and 2/3 for AJ Dillon in 2 seconds. I'd take Treylon Burks in this. I think this is a fine buy low on him right now. I think that obviously DeAndre Hopkins going to Tennessee hurts Treylon Burks, but I think it's better for him long term because he doesn't need to be in that alpha role immediately, doesn't need to be against alpha cornerbacks immediately. And, Treylon Burks himself as a prospect and a rookie coming into the NFL was a very raw player. Like he relied a lot on his athleticism in college to where you can't necessarily do that in the NFL. And he needed to grow and refine his route tree and a lot of the, necessary smaller details about being a wide receiver that you can't just rely on your athleticism. So him learning behind DeAndre Hopkins, who's arguably been one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL for the past 4 or 5 years, I think is definitely going to be fantastic for Treylon Burks in the long term. It might just not be a 2023 hit like some of us were expecting. It might need to be 2024, 2025. But I think this is a fantastic buy low. You're not really giving up anything of note. If this was AJ Dillon in a first or even just a random 2024 first in general for Burks, I would take that side. But a bunch of seconds, that there's just not anything really of substance there. So I'll take Treylon Burks in this. Nick says, Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, Nick. Would you move Justin Fields and CMC for Kyler Murray and Jahmyr Chase in a competitive window for Dynasty? One quarterback, start 8. Man. This is a fantastic question. I think I would do it. I would do it just to go get Jahmyr Chase. That's basically, I think, the way that I would see it. I think it's going to suck moving away from CMC, and it might suck on the field on the days that Fields really goes off. But you have Lamar Jackson as well. I feel like in majority of the weeks, you would still be starting Lamar Jackson over Justin Fields. That's at least how I would also be doing it and how I would be attacking things. So I would still be playing Lamar. So basically, just swapping out backup quarterbacks, and then going from CMC to Jahmyr Chase. I'd be willing to do that. Yeah. It still keeps you competitive now in 2023 and longer down the future because you have Jahmyr Chase in Dynasty, not Christian McCaffrey, and waiting for another injury or waiting for, the running back ageness to catch up to him and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Jahmyr Chase. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Trading away a rebuilding 2024 first for Joe Burrow in a one quarterback league. Yep. Dave, hope this stays weekly. Great Friday lunchtime with a side of insight. that was kind of the idea. So yeah, this should be staying weekly, especially as we ramp up towards the season and we get in season. This should be staying weekly, and maybe I'll get some more people to join me periodically. Jamie asks, how early would you draft Kyler Murray in a Superflex startup? He is still a first round pick for me, probably around 111, 112. I can go, let me pull up ADP so I have the right reference of players. So I'm not really naming these guys off in order. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert. I'm not putting any Fields, Lawrence. There's, where are we at? 8. I would take Chase and Jefferson over Kyler, but then I would have Kyler at 11. So yeah, 11 or 12. That's where I would take. Yep. I didn't miss anybody, right? I wouldn't take Bijan over him. I wouldn't take any other wide receiver over him. And I would take him still over Richardson, Dak. Deshaun Watson is kind of iffy, so Watson and Kyler would be my 11 and 12 in some order. If you ask me again tomorrow, Kyler might be 12 and Deshaun might be 11. Ask me on Sunday, and that order could be reversed. But 11 or 12, still a first-round pick. Back end first. Mixon owner in my league has Saquon and no depth. What combo of the following would you propose for Joe Mixon? If you can get away with any combination of 2 of these players, it'd probably have to be Brian Robinson would have to be like the main guy because I feel like he's the most secure running back on this entire list in terms of potential production, name value. Jamal Williams might be the other one for that. If you could trade Jamal Williams and Brian Robinson and just go get Joe Mixon, I'm in on that. Like I would do that. If you can do Williams and Dillon, Williams and Herbert, or Robinson and Dillon, Robinson and Herbert, any combination of any two of these guys, I'd definitely do. Even if you had to do Williams and Robinson and Kenneth Gainwell, that's fine. Do that. I'd be willing to do that too. Although I will say, so you say that you need an RB2 behind Bijan. Um, I don't think you need an RB2 to be honest. I would just be playing through a bunch of all those guys every single week. Just go to Brian Robinson one week, go to Jamal Williams the next week. If another player gets hurt, then you have another starter potentially. If Najee gets hurt, then you have Jalen Warren. If A-Chain gets hurt, then Jeff Wilson looks a lot nicer. If Roshan gets hurt, then Khalil Herbert looks a lot nicer. That's the handcuff model that I like to go for. Or you could also go for guys like James Conner, I think is a good one. You can go. I really like Antonio Gibson. You have Brian Robinson already, so maybe you don't want to go that route and just want to kind of put all of your chips on one running back there. But I really like Antonio Gibson as another buy low player. You can go for James Cook or where else are we at? Rashad White. These guys are a little too expensive. But apparently, according to ADP, they're all less expensive than Joe Mixon. So it might be worth your while. But Mixon might seem more gettable just because nobody really wants him. So looking to acquire Justin Jefferson in my one quarterback 12 team half PPR dynasty league. Is sending Waddle and Kenneth Walker enough? It might be enough. It really depends on how the other manager feels about Kenneth Walker. I think is really the main piece of this, because Waddle plus a dynasty RB1, I think should net you Justin Jefferson. But if they view Kenneth Walker as more as like an RB2, Zach Charbonnet really hurt his value, all that kind of stuff in the argument against Kenneth Walker, then I could see that not necessarily being enough. Maybe you have to add an extra second or some other piece or something like that, of which I would still be willing to do. Like I'd be willing to just send Waddle and Kenneth Walker, just go get Justin Jefferson, just call it a day. Jefferson replaces Waddle, fill in some other player on your bench for Kenneth Walker. And it's probably a win now and long term with Justin Jefferson. So I think it should be enough, but again, it depends on how they view Kenneth Walker. Worried about the Dalvin to New England rumors as far as Rhamondre goes. Trying to trade Mondre for an RB with similar production. Struck out on Pollard. So I am not, honestly. And I've seen a lot of people also saying that they're worried about Leonard Fournette going to New England because he worked out with them. To be honest, I think New England just is going to sign somebody, and they kind of have to because they need depth. Teams need depth at this point. To where, the only players behind Rhamondre right now are Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong, and that's it. There's nothing solidified behind them. And if you look at what Rhamondre was doing last year with Damian Harris, like Rhamondre was still getting good volume. Like he was scoring 12, 13, 14 fantasy points per game with Damian Harris active and getting like 10 to 14 touches a game. So I think if Dalvin Cook came in and took that same type of role, then Mondre is just basically in the same role that he was in last year with Damian Harris, which is still a top end RB2. Now, if you want to, I definitely don't mind, potentially trying to trade side grade with Mondre. You could be looking at guys. Tony Pollard would have been the first name that came to my mind for him, but Najee Harris maybe could be another one. Maybe you take advantage of somebody who's worried about Josh Jacobs, although you're trading one risk for another risk on the franchise tag. But I think Josh Jacobs plays. And I think I think Josh Jacobs playing 16 or 17 under the franchise tag is much higher of a probability than Mondre getting Cook or Fournette. Like I think New England signed somebody. And I also think that Josh Jacobs plays this year. So as long as he's healthy, he'll be good. But maybe you take advantage of going after Josh Jacobs as well. Maybe you tier over to Nick Chubb. I don't like if you add a second to Rhamondre. I don't know if you can get Nick Chubb. I wouldn't go down to like Derrick Henry. I feel like that adds too much age. And I feel like going down to Javonte or J.K. Dobbins or Mixon or all these other guys just introduces too much risk and not enough production for the risk with those guys. So I'm totally fine keeping Rhamondre, but Najee, Chubb, Jacobs, those would be interesting, I think, side grades to go for. Dynasty got to drop 3 of these guys. So Hutchinson is gone, Tyquan Thornton gone, and Evan Hull. It says it is. I like Evan Hull. But yeah, Hutchinson, Tyquan Thornton, Evan Hull. Kurt, morning to you as well. Kurt is also a member of the DLF YouTube channel, so be more like Kurt. And if you want to help support what we're doing here monetarily, what Justin and I are doing, you get extra content. We have a Discord channel. We're talking about starting a Dynasty League right now. I'm working up some other cool stuff for you guys, for the members and stuff, in terms of additional resources for things that Justin and I can provide for you guys. So you get some cool perks if you become a channel member. Are you worried with the Jordan Addison news? And if so, what are you looking for in return? Which I'm assuming Joe goes on that one as well too. And Rise with other things. Should be worried about Jordan Addison. So the interesting part about Jordan Addison's citation, I guess, is from what I saw last night, currently the NFL does not have plans to suspend him, which I think is wild. Let me see if I can find that again. It's all just about his citation, which is wild. But I did see a tweet from an NFL reporter saying that currently that the NFL is not looking at suspending him, which I think is completely crazy because that just means that gambling, you get a whole year, and gambling on or at least 6 games, like what Jamison Williams found, for not even betting on the NFL or anything like that. But, going 3 times the speed limit and endangering the safety of everybody around you, including yourself, totally fine. But that's ethics. So am I worried about Jordan Addison in terms of dynasty because of this news? No, I'm not. I'm really not at all. Like, honestly, you could treat it as more of like an injury, which is even better because he's not actually injured. So it's not as bad of an injury, and we got to worry about him coming back and playing through, soft tissue injuries or how his production will look like after all that kind of stuff. This is really just, another example of an NFL player who gets potentially suspended if he does get suspended for off the field conduct. I mean, we saw it with Ezekiel Elliott. We saw it with multiple other people who, Ben Roethlisberger freaking ran into on another car, got into an actual accident on his motorcycle, was totally fine as well too. You can think of all the other cases of actual DUI and all that kind of stuff. Like, players just get kind of slapped on the wrist and then it's totally fine moving forward. So I'm not concerned about this at all in terms of his dynasty outlook. Maybe it just sucks because maybe he does get suspended and his rookie season is kind of, derailed because of that. But long term, no, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about looking for anything in return. I'm not looking to side grade him because I think that he's in a fantastic opportunity in Minnesota. He's my rookie wide receiver too. I think that he has the potential to be a top 15 dynasty wide receiver at the end of the season with a breakout season in year 1. It's really unfortunate that this has come out, and this is kind of a sneak peek into potential character stuff that we haven't necessarily seen before. But I'm not worried about it from a dynasty standpoint. So, yeah. Dave, start up to 3 tight end. Holy crap. 3 tight ends and 2 point per reception tight end premium. Offered 24 for Waller, and that owner's interested but doesn't have enough tight ends. Do it without adding the 4th. Like, just John Bates is whatever. And Logan Thomas at this point too could also be whatever. So I mean, you can try it and see if it gets done. And then say like, well, just throw off the 4th and then see, do you get all that for just Darren Waller? Because that would be a massive win. I think, in this type of format in this league. So yeah, I would think just it's so weird to see names like Logan Thomas and John Bates and all that stuff. Yeah, I would keep adding things on the side that don't necessarily seem like they're fantastic pieces. Because if he's already interested and worried about not having enough tight ends, just keep throwing stuff at him and see if he eventually accepts. Jamie, who are some cheap tight ends that you're buying in Dynasty? Is Jelani Woods a good buy right now? I do think Jelani Woods is a good buy. Um, Cheap tight ends that I really, really like. I like Dalton Schultz. I like Tyler Higbee. I like Luke Schoonmaker from the Cowboys. Mike Gesicki is probably like my favorite tight end in 2023 right now, both in redraft and dynasty. He's like insanely cheap. I like Hunter Henry, even I think has a bounce back season in terms of red zone work. So he's more of like start him and hope and pray that he scores a touchdown, but he might score a touchdown in more games than he doesn't this year. Um, both Green Bay Packers tight ends, I'd be willing to take a shot on both of them, just see whoever wins out that job. If one becomes more productive than the other one. Gerald Everett is another one as well too. Isaiah Likely, another one too. So that yeah, there's a bunch of tight ends that I think that are really, really good names right now that you can buy super cheap and get some really maybe random, but also some pretty solid production from at certain spots throughout the season, or maybe all season, like the case of Mike Gesicki or Tyler Higbee. I think Higbee is a fantastic one right now. So hopefully between all those names that you got somebody out of it. Drop 4, Josh Palmer, A-Rob, Claypool, Nico, Tank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so out of these 5 guys here, I would keep Nico Collins. Everybody else can go. I would try to keep Tank Dell. Like if you had some other guy that you were on the fence on, I would try to keep Tank Dell as well too. But out of this whole entire group, I'm keeping Nico Collins. Everybody else ain't that great. Sorry, Chase Claypool fans. What are your thoughts on Jake Ferguson this year? I feel like he's a cheap sleeper. Dak loves to check down to his tight end. Yes, he does. So Jake, I really like Luke Schoonmaker, and I was super intrigued by the fact that they paid a second round pick to draft him this year, which I think is really, really interesting. Jake Ferguson, however, is basically like a carbon copy clone of Dalton Schultz. Like if you just compare their two profiles in terms of like combine metrics, height, weight, even almost down to like what they look like, they are very almost identical players. So I think if anybody were to take over the role immediately, it would be Jake Ferguson. So I do like that opportunity. Um, and yeah, as for Dave as well too, Schoonmaker has had injury issues as well. Dallas has said that they aren't really an issue, um, but he has had injury issues as well and has not participated in a lot of stuff early on. So that could be another feather in the cap for Jake Ferguson. But I like Schoonmaker more long term. Ferguson maybe for 2023. So yeah, he's another guy that I would potentially add to cheap tight ends. And again, maybe you get like September out of him that you can start, or maybe you don't start him in week 1 or week 2, but you see that there's kind of some signs and signals of production. And you get a few weeks out of him in October, and then things transition into Schoonmaker. All about just streaming at the tight end position at that point. If you don't have, Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Hawk, Goddard. um, What are some buy low wide receivers that won't produce this season but can rise in value after it and also be more productive in 2024? Holy moly. I've never thought of this question framed this question in this kind of way, but it's a fantastic question. All right, so let's go through it. If you guys have any, drop them down in the comments that you think who could be really good and as a fit for a rebuilding team that is not going to be super productive this year, but could rise in value after 2023. A lot of names that come to mind are guys like rookies. I think of really cheap guys like A.T. Perry and Xavier Hutchinson might be another example of that. Maybe even Tank Dell. I think of other guys. Mingo. There's another one. He might need some, basically some adjustment period coming into Carolina and behind Chark and Thielen and stuff like that too. Mingo's a good one. What else are we looking at here? Puka. Puka's a fun one. Rashid Shaheed might be an interesting name as well too. I know a lot of people are like have automatically inserted him as the wide receiver too. But if Michael Thomas is healthy and plays, then you're throwing the ball to Michael Thomas more than you are Rashid Shaheed. So Shaheed might be an interesting one. Darnell Mooney could be interesting just to name get a little bit higher up in here. Alec Pierce could also be interesting as the wide receiver 2 for a rookie quarterback who doesn't really throw a lot or maybe not throw accurately when he does throw. So Alec Pierce might be interesting as a 2024 investment. Josh Downs in the exact same kind of situation on the same team. I like Rashee Rice as well. Maybe Jaden Reed. Again, these are all the rookies, all the those types of guys. Wan'Dale, maybe he doesn't produce a whole lot this year because he's coming back from the ACL injury. So it could be another one for you. Tyler Scott. There's another one. Cedric Tillman, maybe another one too. Maybe Mechie. Maybe, he doesn't get integrated a whole lot into the offense in Houston this year, but could be much better in 2024. Peoples Jones as well. That's kind of goes along with the Cedric Tillman stuff. Basically buying into ambiguity in wide receiver depth charts right now, and seeing if there's different outlets. But Chris, coincident thoughts on Wan'Dale, just traded for him on a rebuild and hoping what he flashed before the ACL injury. That's essentially what we're hoping for. Like, I loved Wan'Dale Robinson coming out of college. He was like my auto drafted 3rd round pick last year because that was his ADP, and I thought that was insane for the production profile that he had coming out of Kentucky. And like I was saying, like why he could be a good fit for not a lot of production in 2023, gains value in 2024 is because of that ACL injury. We saw it with, Michael Gallup and a bunch of other, players where it's always year 2 years removed after the injury that we see production returning to where it was before the injury. So he might be solid in some spots in 2023. But, with a lot of new faces on the team like Paris Campbell and Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale might be kind of just in the mix of all of that kind of stuff as he's rehabbing and returning from injury. But next year, because I do believe in the talent, the opportunity could also match up next year too. He could climb back up the depth chart and be basically just where he was right before the injury too. So, yeah. All right, let me go back up here. I just went to that one because it was convenient on the fact that I had mentioned Wan'Dale. Keeping both Nico and Dell would be nice, but unless if you're a roster spot. This is a very short, shallow dynasty league, I'm guessing. So I would keep Nico, and then he would become the first player that you can cut for some other guy that you have on the waiver wire. It seems like your waiver wire would be pretty active during the league because there's decent players on it for a dynasty league. So Nico, I would keep Nico now. If he doesn't pan out, he becomes player 1 to drop in season. Do you think that Kirk's production tanks because of Calvin Ridley? No, I do not. I think that honestly, I would not be surprised if Christian Kirk outscores Calvin Ridley this year. But I've called Jacksonville the wide receiver 2 version of Philadelphia, where, in Philly, because they're a high-powered offense, super efficient, fantastic team, AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith can both operate simultaneously as fantasy wide receiver 1s. Maybe it's one of them's a 1 and one of them's a high-end 2, or they're both 1s, or they're both high-end 2s, or they're both, all that kind of stuff. But they largely operate in the wide receiver 4 to wide receiver like 14 range, whereas Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, I think, are the wide receiver 2 versions of that, where maybe one of them's a 2 and one of them's a 3 this week. Then the next week it swaps. The other one's a 2, the other one's a 3. They're both 2s. They're both high-end 3s, where they live in like the wide receiver 15 to wide receiver like 25 range, essentially. And I'm sure because of, just how that offense might be, and maybe because of certain weeks and stuff where one of them's out or one of them's like the main guy, that the other one has spike weeks of wide receiver 1 production. But I think that they'll mostly live in that wide receiver 2 range. And I think that both of them can be absolutely fantastic. They'll both be on the field simultaneously. Like, honestly, Calvin Ridley's presence hurts Zay Jones. Christian Kirk is the slot guy. Calvin Ridley's on the outside. So we have seen plenty of teams where, both wide receivers can operate and be very, very good for fantasy football. Every single year, a handful of teams have top 24 wide receivers. Both of their receivers finish inside the top 24. So I see no reason whatsoever why Jacksonville can't be one of those teams with increased pass production, with Trevor Lawrence taking another step forward. I think Christian Kirk is a fantastic buy low right now if people do think that his production tanks. Spock, I'm sorry, I didn't scroll up enough to see part 1 out of this one. What would your roster build be for a 12-team Superflex, no PPR, no tight end premium, start 9, 4 quarterback point per touchdown? There's a consolation bracket where non-playoff teams can get the 101. Oh, I don't like that rule. But anyway, selling bets in season isn't a good strategy since you can use them in the consolation bracket to get a higher draft pick. I'm not a fan of that format at all. I think the 101 team should be deserving of the 1.01 and not potentially like the 7th best team in the league. But whatever. My roster build, though, would essentially be the same as what I usually have, because I don't know why it would necessarily change. The no PPR might be a little bit different just because that would, but it might help out my general strategy. So my general strategy is I always like to have 4 quarterbacks, 3 of which are top 20. The other one could be like a project kind of guy, somebody who has a lot of upside if things were to go right. Think like holding Jordan Love while Aaron Rodgers was there, or you drafted Sam Howell because you thought that he had potential, or it's Trey Lance, or whoever the heck an upside QB4 could be. And then tight ends, I like to have a top 5 guy. I like to have that, but I will stream the position if I have to. Wide receivers, I like to keep super lean. I like to have 5, 6 guys, 7 guys at most, depending on how many actual roster spots there are in your league. Because then that allows me to have like 15 running backs. And only maybe 3 of them might actually be like top 36 guys. The rest might just be handcuffs. That's how I approach building out my dynasty league. So, and that strategy might be helped by the fact that this is not PPR, and running backs get kind of an extra little boost because, they have more of an opportunity to get 80 yards, 90 yards, 100 yards, whereas wide receivers, they don't get credit for the reception. So it's just completely yardage and touchdowns for them. So if they have, 8 for 80, that's 16 fantasy points in PPR, 8 fantasy points in not PPR. Whereas a running back, could have 80 rushing yards, maybe another extra couple, 10, 15, 20 receiving yards. They get up to 10. The format helps running backs more. But that's how I would build out my roster build. SWAT has Bijan, J.K. Dobbins, and Joe Mixon. RB is my weakest spot. Is there anyone I should go after? I don't. If this is your weakest spot, I think you're sitting pretty good. And again, I don't really treat running backs all that highly valued, but I think you're sitting pretty fine. I think if you want, you could go after like what I was just saying. Just go after handcuffs. Go after. I mean, James Conner is like my auto. Like if you can get him for super cheap because he's going to be an RB1 this year, I think if he stays healthy, then go out and get him. But it would be handcuffs after that. Go out and get all of the higher valued handcuffs. Not even necessarily need to be the higher value handcuffs. Like go get Damian Harris, go get Elijah Mitchell, Jalen Warren, Tyler Algier, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford. Go get Eric Gray. Go get Gus Edwards. Go get Jeff Wilson. Go get Keontae Ingram. Go get those guys. Fill out your running back depth, because if there's an injury, we always know there's going to be injuries at the running back position. So the more handcuffs that you have, the higher probability is that your roster benefits from that running back being injured for any amount of time during the season. It could be for a game or two. It could be for a month. It could be for over half the season because they get hurt in week 6. That's always how I want to be positioning my teams with handcuffed running backs. I just want all of them. Quantity over quality. and just get them all because running backs are going to get hurt. And that's just how the position is. No, Calvin Austin sucks. I mean, so to say this a little bit more realistically, I think that he could beat out Allen Robinson. I don't know if that's necessarily the hardest thing in the world to do right now with how A-Rob is playing, but I don't think Calvin Austin's all that good. So he's been a guy that's just, I think, has weirdly been like, people's like, oh, well, I'm like holding on to this gold mine with Calvin Austin. So whenever he shows up and plays and healthy, he's going to be good. And I'm like, I don't see it. I think he's been a waiver wire guy since he came into the league. Hopefully James Conner, Antonio Gibson, all those handcuffs that I just mentioned. That's the way that I would be looking at it for your depth chart. Jacob, how do you feel having two position players on the same team? Has Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't love it, don't hate it. If I were to trade one, it'd be Amon-Ra St. Brown for me. I don't mind it. I would hate it a little bit more if you had two position players that were on the same position. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of you had like Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. I don't know why, because they're both going to finish as like top 15 wide receivers. But it's just weird to me because then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You might as well just go get Joe Burrow at that point, and just really lean into the Bengals offense going off. But if they're on different positions, I don't hate that, especially because Melvin Gordon just signed with the Baltimore Ravens. Interesting. I don't know if that's not going to affect Gus Edwards. My immediate reaction to that is not going to affect Gus Edwards. Interesting though. Anyway, but no, it doesn't really bother me all that much to have Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. We see, I mean, how many teams have a top 10 running back and a top 10 wide receiver, and they both go off at the same time, and they like neither one of them is really going to impact or cannibalize the other because teams are going to run the ball. Teams are going to pass the ball. A lot of them are at a very even clip or a 60-40 clip throughout every single game. So they're both going to get touches, especially whenever you have, the RB1 and the wide receiver one for a team like that. Like, would you be upset if you had Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams for fantasy football? Probably not. Would you be upset if you had Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson? Probably not. Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen? Probably not. So as long as they're on offenses and they're good enough players, I don't necessarily hate having both of them, especially when they're on different positions that don't necessarily cannibalize each other. So I love it. Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown is amazing. How far would you tear down from DeVonta Smith if getting a 2024 first? So DeVonta Smith, I'm assuming this is Superflex. I'm just going to assume Superflex because this answer would probably change in a one quarterback league. To give you a estimate on who you should be looking for to go from Smith to a 24 first, you're in the wide receiver range of like Calvin Ridley, Jamison Williams, Amari Cooper, maybe Brandon Ayuk is also in there too. Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, Quentin Johnston, Michael Pittman, Jerry Jeudy, John Dotson. This is the range. Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk. That's the range of players that you're looking at to go from DeVonta Smith down to a 24 first plus. I don't know how many of those, I don't know if people are selling a first and Jordan Addison, maybe now, but or a first and Michael Pittman to go up and get DeVonta Smith. But some of those older guys, you might be able to get it with. You might be able to do it with Amari. You might be able to do it with Christian Kirk because people don't like Christian Kirk. Maybe Jamison Williams because they're worried about the suspension or whatever. Maybe Hollywood because Kyler's out and Hollywood sucks and blah, 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 blah. That would be the range that I would be targeting, though, for wide receivers if you're going to trade down. Nice. Booger sugar. All right, hold on one sec. Would you keep all these wide receivers or do some trade ups, do some 2-for-1s? This is an amazing wide receiver group. So the issue here is that you can't start all these guys, right? Unless you're in like a start 15, which you might be, but I don't know. Probably not. I would be looking to just do some 2-for-1s. If you can do like Olave and JSN and go get CD Lamb, call it a day, or how many of these guys can you go and turn into a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase? Can you turn DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley into Jalen Waddle? You know, that those would be the kind of things that I would try to explore with all of these. Basically, treat it as keep AJ Brown and Garrett Wilson, unless you can turn Wilson and Ridley into Justin Jefferson. If that's the move you have to do, then I would do that too. Um, but I'd more than likely keep AJ Brown, keep Garrett Wilson. Everybody from Olave on in this list, I'd be looking to pair two of these guys and see if I can move up. You can even do like micro movements of do like JSN and Calvin Ridley, and you get um, T Higgins or somebody like that, and then you do T Higgins and DK Metcalf, and you get CD Lamb. That kind of stuff. You could do small movements or just one big one. But I'd be looking to move up and see if I can do some 2-for-1s here. Scuba Steve. 12-team Superflex start 9. Olave for Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, and a 25-second win now. The balance of how much I love Tony Pollard for 2023 versus the fact that he's like 25 on a franchise tag, could be on a new team next year, is a really hard balance for me. I think at the end of the day, I would just take Chris Olave and just figure out my running back position from there. Because of Dynasty, you get the age, the security, all that kind of stuff that comes with Chris Olave, the potential production and breakout that could happen in 2023 as well too. Maybe Tony Pollard gets hurt and your whole entire thing just gets shattered. This whole trade is done. But if Chris Olave gets hurt, that'll suck too. But I still feel like your value is more insulated with Chris Olave to where if he gets hurt, you can move him for a running back in season pretty quickly if you really, really needed to. I would take Chris Olave on this one. Chris in a 12-team Superflex start 8. Lamar, CMC, Eckler, Garrett Wilson. That's his team. Is it good for winning this year, or where do you need to improve? All right. So in a start 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you didn't lay out your 8. I think you're good to win. I think you're good to go in. Obviously, having Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler, who could arguably be RBs 1 and 2 by the end of the year, fantastic. You have Garrett Wilson, who's probably going to be top 10. Brandon Ayuk is going to be top 20. Is that Christian Kirk or Kirk Cousins? I'm going to assume Christian Kirk, who could be also top 20. Pitts, hopefully, is it does something. Not necessarily needs to be a breakout, but if he replicates what he did kind of in his rookie season, then that's a top 6 tight end. So that works out for you too. Goff, I think, will be great. You just need another QB3 to play whenever he's away, because his home road splits last year were atrocious. They were really bad. Don't play Jared Goff on the road. But when he's at home, and especially when he's at home against really bad defenses, Jared Goff, that's your starter. But yeah, you're definitely good to compete. Flush out your running backs with some handcuffs. Maybe find an extra QB3, find another wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, some upside guy, even potentially 2, who's a little bit cheaper right now, like a Tyler Lockett or an Elijah Moore or a Jacoby Myers, a Michael Thomas, a Rondale Moore, one of those other guys, just for an extra depth. I don't know what your bench looks like, but this starter lineup is really, really good. Mike says the most stacked team in my league just acquired CMC for Sky Moore and Jamison Williams. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you competing in this league too? Because if you're competing, that sucks. Oh. Never veto, but some education might need to take place in terms of what to do. But Sorry, Mike. You were you were competing, but not anymore. Hey, well, maybe you never know. Injuries can happen. Random stuff like Jordan Addison driving 3 times the speed limit in a 50-mile-an-hour speed zone. Stuff happens. The NFL happens. It's crazy. Players get traded. Players don't do well. You never know. Only best you can do is just position yourself. Oh, Chris, bench, no quarterbacks. Yeah, I would. Yeah, you need to find a QB3. Okay, so you already have Lockett, and Keenan Allen is fantastic too. You have Higbee as well. You have flesh out your running backs. I'd say a little bit more. I'm sure you have a couple others that you didn't want to list up here because they're not really all that impactful. But I'd be fleshing out your running backs, and you need to find a QB3. That's based that yeah. Go get Matthew Stafford. Go get Mac Jones, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Jordan Love. Go get the QB3. How big of a difference in value is there from JSN and Breece Hall? So there's, I would say, a decent amount of value difference, but it's not a first. So, but it's like I wouldn't do a second either. Like I wouldn't trade Breece Hall for JSN in a second. If it was a contenders 2024 first that ultimately ends up being like 109 or later, I think that is the value difference, which essentially, if you're talking about another rookie in this year's class, is like a Zach Charbonnet or another one of the wide receivers like Zay Flowers or Quentin Johnson or Dalton Kincaid, is where that basically equates out to as a late 2024 first as well. That's kind of the difference that you're looking in there between JSN and Breece. I don't know if I would actually trade down from Breece to JSN in a first. I feel like the right answer is to say yes. I don't know if I actually would though, but I feel like that should get done. So, did I have a question? Oh, got another one at the buzzer. PPR redraft must keep 2 out of Waddle in the 4th, Lamar in the 5th, and Hopkins in the 7th. You have the number 2 pick. Options will be one of Chase, Eckler, Cup, CMC. Keep which 2? I'm keeping Waddle and I'm keeping Lamar. I don't want Hopkins. I don't like DeAndre Hopkins in Tennessee. Waddle is a for sure. I think he's locked and loaded. Like there is no debate in this whole entire thing that Waddle is one of your 2 keepers. I would keep then Lamar in the 5th. And then I would take the way that I would rank the options that you have there out of those 4 would be CMC would be number 1. Eckler would be number 2, then Cup, then Jahmyr Chase. So if CMC goes first, take Austin Eckler. If Eckler goes first, take CMC. That's how I do it. Here, Christian, here's the top end of my roster. Start 10, half PPR. Do you feel the need to consolidate? Not necessarily. I mean, holy crap. You have Mahomes, Burrow, and Trevor Lawrence. And in a start 10. I don't know if you would consider, I don't think consolidate is the word for it, but I would be looking to move Trevor Lawrence. Because when are you ever going to start him over Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow? When they're all fully healthy, not on a bye week? When are you ever starting Trevor Lawrence here? He is an asset that that's just sitting on your roster, just eating up value for you, but not giving you any production. So can you move Trevor Lawrence and move him to a team that really needs a quarterback or has a bunch of like QB2s? Go from Trevor Lawrence to Kirk Cousins and get something on top. Scared of injuries. Yeah, but like it's the chance that Mahomes and Burrow gets hurt is just so low. And then that's why you still need a QB3 at that point. Like that's why I'm saying go down to like Kirk Cousins or go down to Tua even, or Dak. And see if you can just get anything else on top of that, just as an extra piece. Maybe you do Trevor Lawrence and ETN for, Dak Prescott and Nick Chubb, and you get some sort of an upgrade there. That would be the only thing that I really look at this. Your team is fantastic. But man, one gets hurt long term, my chances go down drastically. But if one of them doesn't get hurt, I see what you're saying. I mean, your team is so stacked in every single way in this that I guess you don't necessarily have to, but I just feel like you're leaving value out there that you could upgrade somewhere else, you know. But you have a fantastic roster. Don't stop doing what you're doing that built out this roster because it's fantastic. But that's the only thing that I see. Jamie, where would you put Brock Bowers in your dynasty rankings? Is he a better prospect than Kyle Pitts? So that is he a better prospect than Kyle Pitts comes from, or at least it was said in the 2024 mock draft video that we posted that Matt did last week, Sunday. It was on Sunday. They said that he is a better prospect than Kyle Pitts is right now, which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with. Kyle Pitts is a much better athlete than Brock Bowers will be. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster. But man, the production that Brock Bowers has, he is Georgia's offense, like entirely Georgia's offense. He has rushing touchdowns, and not just like the 1 or 2 yard touchdowns that like Travis Kelce might randomly get. But he has like 50-yard rushing touchdowns because they didn't end around. And he just ran faster than everybody. He's ridiculous. He is at least on par, if not better, of a prospect than Kyle Pitts. But I don't think he's going to be priced that way because we're scarred from Kyle Pitts. So there's going to be that really interesting dynamic there, and that could offer a decent discount in next year's rookie class. Where would I rank him in terms of dynasty rankings at the tight end position? I would have him as my tight end 5. I would have him ahead of, I would have him behind Kelce, Andrews, Hawkinson, and I would still have him behind Kyle Pitts because at least we've seen Kyle Pitts have 1,000-yard season. We don't necessarily know that about Brock Bowers, but I would have Brock Bowers ahead of George Kittle and ahead of Dallas Goedert. It's essentially it's like an 8 to 10 year age difference between the two of them. And Brock Bowers has a much higher ceiling, I think, than Dallas Goedert, and doesn't have the injury concerns with George Kittle. And I'd just be willing to hit reset going from Kittle to Brock Bowers. I'd be willing to do that. And he's definitely ahead of, Kincaid and Freiermuth and Waller and Ingram and all those guys. So, but I would have Brock Bowers tight end 5 if he came into the league right now. Mixon and JSN plus what for Breece Hall? Plus another Joe Mixon, I think. Basically. I don't think a second gets it done. Like just a random 24 second, I don't think that gets done. But first is too much to add at this point with Joe Mixon. So another Mixon kind of player, somebody that rides that first, second line really, really hard. And like a Debo, a McLaurin, one of those kind of players. Mustang, I got JSN, got him. Love JSN, got him at a bargain at 107. Entered contending, worth going after DeVonta Smith, or dude is selling Cooper, Tyreek, and Connor to. We'll go get Tyreek and James Conner. Bam. What are you giving up for him? I love buying Tyreek Hill, honestly. Especially from people who are entering rebuilds, or they think that, because Tyreek said that he's going to retire in 3 years, that holy crap, I need to get rid of Tyreek Hill. That's 3 years from now. That's 1, 2, 3 more years of potentially Tyreek Hill level top 5, top 3 fantasy production that you're getting out of Tyreek. I almost think that that's better for Tyreek's value because at least when the end is, right? Whereas for a lot of other players that could keep their value so depressed is this year the end? Is next year the end? That was like the issue with Larry Fitzgerald. If Larry Fitzgerald told us at age like 31 that he's playing for sure for 4 more years, I don't think his value would have been as low as it was when he was producing like that. Whenever Carson Palmer came into the mix and they went to the Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess they never went to the Super Bowl in those years, did they? They were contenders in the NFC. Steelers beat them in the Super Bowl.
Here are the standings for the NFL in the current season.
So you just scared the crap out of me. Yeah, go get Cooper and Tyreek. You think Bowers is the best non-quarterback prospect in 2024? That in a class with Marvin Harrison Jr. That is a hot take. Wow. I don't mind it though. But wow. To say that out loud on July 21st, 2023, I love it. Price check on Jamison Williams in a Superflex half PPR. I would send a random 24 first for him. I don't know if you need to send that much. This is very dependent on who has Jamison Williams in your league. But I feel like the majority of people would have to get that first for him. They'd have to get a pick or a player that they feel confident in just hitting reset on or giving them enough production this year that they are okay missing out on the potential upside of Jamison Williams. Like if you sent them Terry McLaurin for Jamison Williams, I think a lot of people would hit accept on that. Or maybe Amari Cooper, or I don't like Deontay. I don't think gets it done because people hate Deontay. But I think a random 2024 first will get it done. I'd send a 25 first for him as well too. 108 and 304 or Chubb, Nick Chubb. That's pretty easy. Even in Superflex. I would easily give up Quentin Johnston and a third for Nick Chubb. Or Zay Flowers in the third, or even Jordan Addison. If the 108 ended up being Jordan Addison, like if 107 went Quentin Johnston and you got Jordan Addison, I'd do that. Rip Dobbins. Nah, Melvin Gordon ate it. Melvin Gordon couldn't beat out Isaiah Pacheco last year. So Dobbins is better than Pacheco. Should Dan move DK and Mooney for Jahmyr Gibbs? Wow, that's a good question. You have a fantastic wide receiver core. I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh, you start 3 wide receivers. Yeah, no, I'm taking Jahmyr Gibbs over DK Metcalf. Because I think if Jahmyr Gibbs explodes, we're talking about a guy who has like top 2 dynasty running back value potential. If for sure top 3, because it'll be Bijan, Gibbs, and Breece Hall. I think are going to be the top 3 for the next couple of years, unless a 2024 guy really pops off. And I think unless DK really produces, I think DK's value is kind of just going to be where it is right now. Like, I think he's just going to be like how T Higgins is, where it's just, he's going to be there as a back end wide receiver 1 in Dynasty because he has to be. He can't be any lower, but he can't be any higher because he's not as good as all the other elite wide receivers. And I'll take Jahmyr Gibbs. Do I play in any IDP leagues? Nope, because IDP is terrible. I've tried. I've tried, but I can't do it. I can't do IDP. Robert, and 1 quarterback traded Kenneth Walker for 225 first should easily be early to mid. No, I'd take 2 random firsts over Kenneth Walker right now. I feel like I would do that for a decent number of running backs, and Kenneth Walker is definitely one of them. Especially if they're early to first. Like if you just told me that you just traded Kenneth Walker for Quinshon Judkins or Nick Singleton, yeah, love it. Go ahead and ask it though. Ask your IDP question. I'm sure there's people in the chat that probably know. I'd give it my best. Thoughts on AJ Dillon? I've cooled off on him a lot over the past couple of years. It's really unfortunate that he hasn't gotten more playing time, but he's behind Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is just so good. He is a Alexander Madison plus type of player right now. Like how Madison was behind Cook. If Aaron Jones ever got hurt, AJ Dillon would be fantastic in that role by himself. but it's so unfortunate because I think AJ Dillon's pretty good. He just hasn't gotten an opportunity. Russell Wilson for Keenan Allen and a third for your QB3 and a super flex. Chris, boom, making deals on the spot. You love to see it. That's a fantastic. I know, like, it hurts giving away Keenan Allen because he is such a good win now piece, but to just go out and get the quarterback, especially the quarter, like you got Russell Wilson, who I absolutely love. I think he's going to have a bounce back season for 2023. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he's your QB2 ahead of Jared Goff by like the end of September, and that you're just plugging and playing Russell Wilson, and Jared Goff has become your guy that has become your bye week fill-in or your injury fill-in, or when Jared Goff gets a at home against a bad defense, that kind of matchup, because that's when Jared Goff it really exceeds. But yeah, that was awesome. Way to go, Chris. Did we run out of questions? I have maybe like 5 to 10 more minutes before I have a meeting on Fridays. You know how it'd be. Plus plus lunch is probably ending for some of y'all. Unfortunately, have to go back to the real world, back to work. Did I not see? Did I miss your first question? I don't see. This is the first one I see. Shadrack. Appreciate you being in here, though. Hey, you'll be happy to know that I've kind of come around on Christian Watson. I don't hate him as much as I did. There we go. But yeah, Christian Watson. I drafted him in Scott Fishbowl. I have the Watson love stack in Scott Fishbowl, so I'm hoping you're right, dude, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. But yeah, I'm gonna be up soon in Scott Fishbowl too. But all right, Derrick Henry, James Cook, and Raheem Mostert are your only running backs in a start 10 PPR Dynasty League. Do I make a move for another before the season? I am generally not the kind of person to look at my roster before the season, and you're evaluating, where you need some help at. If you're competing, if you're rebuilding, if you identify that you're competing, you're going for it in 2023, but you notice that your running back position is not the best. I'm not the kind of person for buying a running back before the season starts, because training camp can happen, preseason can happen. And I know injuries can happen at any point, but it's just so much better to just get through August and start the season out, knowing who's healthy and knowing who's not, than it is to buy a running back right now and then they get hurt in August. Like that sucks. Like if you bought Cam Akers or J.K. Dobbins a couple years ago at this time, that would have been terrible. It would have been so, like, not necessarily like the worst process move, especially if the trade was good value wise, but that just would have sucked so bad. So yeah, if your team is young, you have no really urgency to win now. I would not be looking to buy a running back, and I would just see how the first couple of weeks go. Like, because if it ends up being that you're 3-0, you're 4-0 through September with the lineup that you have right now with Derrick Henry and James Cook, then maybe you go out and you add somebody on the cheap. I still, and I think I said this last week too, like I still would be very hesitant to send away that first if you start out 3-0, 4-0, because by the end of October, then you could be 4-4 and maybe not get into the playoffs and no longer have a first. That's the fear for that side as well too. I'd be looking to trade for cheaper guys. I mentioned James Conner probably about 15 times today. But other players in the James Cook kind of range is where I would be looking to buy guys, but not until September. Because if it ends up, and I would give it a couple weeks of the season too, because like you said, if your team is majorly young outside of Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry, and you don't really have any urgency to win now, it could end up being that you start out 1-3, 0-4, and now your first round pick is potentially Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, Caleb Williams, Drake May, you know, and that's just kind of how it is. And then you start selling off Devontae, you sell off Derrick Henry. I would just go into the season, see how your team starts performing to start the year, and then make a move then. So about Dillon, not sure if if you're trying to sell him or wait to see what happens next year. The problem with AJ Dillon is that I feel like his price is just so low that it just doesn't make sense really moving off from him. Like you're not getting a first for him, and I would not sell AJ Dillon for just a random second. Um, so it's really hard. Like unless if you're able to basically upgrade from AJ Dillon and go to somebody like an Alexander Madison, go to Zach Charbonnet, go to Cam Akers or Swift or Aaron Jones, somebody who is going to give you a lot more production this year and probably has more value. I mean, you only add like a second or a couple seconds or some other wide receiver 3 to make that jump. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to trade back. I'm not trying to just trade away for just a random second or anything like that. I'd be looking to just upgrade from Dillon to another running back. The Ravens just signed Kyle Van Noy. Dude felt some money was burning in his pocket and just decided to sign 2 free agents in an hour. Awesome. I still can't understand your hatred for Watson. It wasn't necessarily, so it probably was hatred. But I didn't think that he was a great prospect. And then his 2022 season and game logs are just so hyped up on touchdown efficiency. Like it was like he was only getting like 6-7 targets a game, but he would score a touchdown or 2. And he'd be really good for fantasy. So, and now he has Jordan Love. I don't even know if Jordan Love's going to be good. I do hate Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool does suck. I don't like Chase Claypool. And that's me as a Steelers fan too. So I never thought Chase Claypool was good. What's the lowest player or value you'd accept to offload Josh Jacobs? So Jacobs was in the trade show yesterday. But the lowest player of value that I would accept to move off of Josh Jacobs would be, if you're looking at the running back position, I would 100% be willing to side grade from him to go to Tony Pollard, go to Nick Chubb. Those are probably the only 2 options that I really feel comfortable side grading to at running back. At wide receiver, if you can get anybody around and in the range of a JSN, if you're just kind of trying to rebuild, DK Metcalf I would do as well too. DeVonta Smith, we're getting a little higher, I think, above where Josh Jacobs' ADP and value lies, but that's where I would feel like I wouldn't feel comfortable moving Jacobs over to Calvin Ridley or Devontae Adams, because I feel like if you're moving him to that point, I'd rather just keep the running back. Don't move him over for like Debo or Christian Watson or somebody like that. So yeah, that's again, I said this earlier today. I feel like Jacobs is playing. So if he's playing 15, 16, 17 games, I still think he's going to be a top 10, if not top 5 fantasy running back, and he's going to be great. And I want that. So I'm willing to buy if his price is a little deflated right now. And that's why to me, like, in order to move away from him, I need somebody that I'm either just as, if not more confident in terms of the production, dynasty value, combination of both, age, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Derek, I'm glad you asked this IDP question, and I'm glad that we have IDP people in here. This is Derek's questions, by the way. Oop, my bad. Keep 4 linebackers. I know who these people are, but I don't know how they do in IDP scoring. My thought, yeah, Genji had a good Wagner, Edwards, and Queen. Got to keep Ernest. These are the answers that you get in the chat when I cannot provide IDP answers. So, Derek, I'm sorry I can't give you an answer, but hopefully between the other comments and stuff from guys who do know IDP, You can do that too. If you wanted to throw out that on Twitter, if you have Twitter and wanted to toss that out, I can retweet it, help you get some more comments. I could send it over to a couple of the IDP guys that work for DLF, and get you some answers from there too. So I'm down to help to continue trying to help with an answer. Singleton will be a beast next rookie. Hey, see? Look at that. We almost got to the end. An hour, hour and 15 minutes in before my internet crashed. But my internet just couldn't take the thought of how good Nick Singleton is going to be in 2025. In case, for those of you that don't know, I'm a Penn State fan as well, too. That's why that Godwin jersey is a Penn State jersey. That's why Saquon, John Capoletti signed helmet. That's Penn State football down there. Nick Singleton's going to be really, really good. Zay Flowers or Treylon Burks? I think I take Zay. I agree with you. I think I take Zay. I've been hearing there was some Zay Flowers hype earlier today that he's been by far the best wide receiver in OTAs and stuff for the Ravens. And that was with hype that they're talking about how they're going to send Lamar back to his Louisville days. He's just going to throw, and he's going to run. He's going to scramble. He's going to do all that amazing, like, collegey kind of stuff. And I'm so excited for it. And with that, they said that Zay Flowers has been absolutely tremendous in OTAs. So I think I hit the reset on Burks and just go to Zay Flowers and see what happens. He and Odell have been the best wide receivers. Well, I heard Zay Flowers is the best wide receiver. No. That's I'm just joking and messing around with Odell. But yeah, I think Zay Flowers is going to be good for sure. Zay's nasty. Yeah. Where are we at? I'd take Christian Kirk in this one as well too. But I don't think that's a bad price to get an extra second on top. I don't think it's a bad price for Treylon Burks. But I really, really like Christian Kirk. Tyler, we're saying hammer Kyler Murray. Tyler. Want to get your thoughts? Superflex PPR Christian Watson in the 109 for. Oh yeah, Kyler. Oh man, we got it from the Christian Watson guy. Take Kyler Murray, yeah, because it's the 109. You're going to end up taking. Maybe you get lucky and you get Zay Flowers or Kincaid there. I think you're guaranteed one of the two, right? Mathematically, Flowers. Yeah, I think you're guaranteed either Flowers or Kincaid. But I'd happily send both of those guys and Christian Watson and just go get Kyler Murray, who's going to be at, probably a QB1 whenever he returns. So, I agree with this as well too. Might even be sooner. Might even be sooner for Zay. Think Gordon is just a depth signing for Baltimore? Yes, I do. Yeah, I think that's all it is. Because I mean, who else did they have behind Gus? Justice Hill was still there, wasn't he? They have Dobbins, Gus, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell. Yeah, it's a depth signing for sure. Yeah. So there it is. Meeting's in a few minutes. Perfect timing. there's like a buzzer beater last second question. Internet. What happens if New England signs Fournette? Depth. I said this kind of at the beginning because we were talking about it. If Dalvin Cook signs with Stevenson, that I just think it's a depth signing. I think Fournette is the same exact player as Rhamondre, just like 5 years older, 4 years older, might even be 3 years older because Rhamondre was an older prospect, but he's just an older version of Rhamondre. He's depth at this point. They do the exact same things. They're both power players. They're both really underrated receivers. It's depth. So yeah. All right. So before my internet kicks out again one more time and kills me, I appreciate everybody hopping on and joining me for this little over an hour. But I got to run. So same time next week, still going to try and figure out this internet thing so that I'm not glitching all over the place and can give you guys a better experience. But thank you all so much for joining, for asking questions, for just hanging out with me for the past hour or so. Maybe Justin will be joining us here either next week or the week after that. But I will be trying to have more guests on or more input, I guess, as well too. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much. We'll catch y'all later.